Hello, I'm Betty Swann. Welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you get help for the tough decisions in your life. Tonight I have a great guest. She is a singer and songwriter, Jean Lee. Welcome, Jean. It's great to have you on this show, and I cannot wait to hear about your life.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So give me a little bit of your background, where you came from, how you ended up here.
Well, my family and I, we grew up on Long Island, not too far from Manhattan, and you know, I've been just living here, singing and songwriting and just doing music all my life. And then I went away to school in the Midwest in Michigan, and then, you know, after 4 years of studying psychology, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with it, I always had this passion for music. So I knew I was going to work somehow in the performing arts or something related to music. And so when I came back to New York, I found myself, you know, working at Lincoln Center and working with a bunch of really world-renowned musicians. And actually now I'm working for a talent agency. So I feel like I've kind of gotten a whole 360 sort of hand on the industry.
On where you would go with your career, or just how people navigate through a career?
Yeah, how people, you know, just the ins and outs of the music business. Being a singer-songwriter, you also want to be, you know, aware of how the industry runs and, you know, making connections with the right people. So I feel like I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to that. And, you know, being around really great musicians and great agents, and yeah.
And you've learned a lot about, haven't you, about what to do and what not to do?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that they don't, you know, they don't teach you, you know.
No,
in music
so
school
what
or
are
anything
some
like
things
that.
you've learned? Because people are watching and they
Yeah.
want to know.
Yeah.
What are some things?
I think the biggest thing is to be yourself. I think a lot of people feel like they have to put on a front or put on some sort of image so that others like them, or especially in music too. Like,
Oh,
if,
really?
You know,
In music
yeah,
especially?
I think so. And especially as a musician yourself, you want other people to like your music, to like your style, to like your stage presence or whatever. And I think the greatest thing that you can really take away from is to be yourself. People are going to see you for who you are and not for anything else. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned and am still learning right now, to be confident in your personality, confident in who you are and your identity.
Well, how do you go about doing that? I know good and well there's people watching you right now going, I got that,
Sure.
I understand that. How do you do it?
Sure.
So what did you do? What do you do?
I'm still learning, to be honest. I've struggled a lot with self-esteem and just knowing who I am as Jean, you know, as...
And is Jean good enough?
Right,
Just
is
being
Jean good
Jean?
enough? And not only that, Jean as a singer-songwriter. I think I grew up in a way where, you know, Jean, who was always good at school or, you know, good at sports and listening to her teachers and her parents and that kind of thing. And I didn't really understand who I was for myself. So now as a young adult and going through different life experiences, I've really had to wrestle with coming to terms with, you know, my weaknesses and my strengths and being okay with both and understanding that I am good enough and, you know, that you know, I can do a lot of the things that I set myself out to do.
And great things.
Yeah.
You tell yourself, I can do great things.
Absolutely. And even that term is hard for me to say sometimes. I really had to learn how to speak that over myself and say, yes, you can do great things because you are who you are and you have all these great assets.
Well, the greatest thing I learned was meeting people that had done things at high levels and discovering they were just like everybody else.
Right.
They just happened to be doing something and they paid the price to get there.
Right.
But they were just normal. And I began to think, well, somebody's got to do it. Why not me?
Right.
Why can't I do it?
Right.
And that has helped me more than anything.
Right, right. I think a lot of the things that people wrestle with is also fear. I mean, I know I've had to I still do. I still get afraid of a lot of things.
When you're performing?
When I'm performing, when I'm even talking with people, when, you know, a lot of different thoughts run through your mind, like, am I saying the right things, or am I singing correctly, or are they going to judge me? And I think that's one of the things that constantly runs through my mind, at least, about judgment and what people think of me.
I heard a man say one time that if you have to go into a room full of strangers or people that could possibly look at you one way or another, and you have that nervous feeling, to always say these three things to yourself right before you walk in.
Yeah.
I am calm, confident, and smiling.
That's good. That's good.
And so it's CCS.
CCS, okay.
Yep.
I'll have
so
to
when
remember
I
that
go
next
into
time I
a
go on
room like
stage.
that or a group, I always think CCS.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just talk to myself. I'm calm, I'm confident, and I'm smiling.
Yeah.
It navigates you through the room.
Yeah.
It's amazing how it'll work. But I want to tell you another thing I learned, Jean, about being yourself and being your best self, but don't try to be something that somebody might expect you to be. And I want to see if you've learned this.
Right.
A man said to me, Betty, when you're the most completely natural, God will be the most supernatural through you.
That's good.
Now, isn't that good to know?
That's good.
Because that causes you to back off.
Right, right.
Yeah, so let's say you're in a talent agency, a high level,
Yeah.
very famous
Right.
talent company, agency. How have you navigated yourself through these meetings and all the people you've had to meet? How have you navigated yourself through it?
Well, there are definitely times where I've frozen up and felt inadequate, you know, giving a presentation or just talking with my boss even, or other agents. But I think I probably did say those three things or something along those lines to myself quietly before a meeting, like running into a bathroom and like just looking in the mirror and saying like, you can do this, you can do this.
It's so important to do that.
It is.
It's amazing who looks back at you when you look in the mirror.
Yeah, and I think the power in just speaking those words out and even smiling, I think smiling kind of has that effect of uplifting your spirit. And so I've had to do that numerous times, but I think I've just had to learn through my failures of you know, going through those awkward moments or going through maybe a rejection or, you know, not.
Well, let's talk about that a second. Let's say, think back to some of the times that you've had the rejection or you felt like you didn't perform or didn't interview well, whatever you want to say. And you felt that when you got back alone, because we all go through that. You're definitely not the only one. Probably most people do.
Right.
But what do you say to yourself to get yourself from the feeling of, I did not do well, they didn't like me, and maybe they didn't.
Right.
Maybe they were not the people for you to be with.
Right, right. I think I have to ask myself, you know, did you put your best foot forward? Did you, you know, you prepared all this stuff and, you know, do you feel, I just asked myself, do you think you did a good job? And what does God think that you did, you know? God sees you in a way that's totally different from everybody else. And I think I remind myself that God is pleased with whatever I do, whether it's bad or good or, you know, just horrible, whatever the case may be. I think He really sees the nature of my heart. So that's the most important to me. So regardless of what people felt or might say or not say, it kind of sounds harsh, but it doesn't have much of a bearing on me as it did maybe a couple years back when I really didn't understand who I was in God, when I wasn't as confident as I am now.
How did you come to that place? That you got? Did you get a relationship with God? Did you?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home.
Or you're now. What nationality are you?
My background is I'm Korean American.
All right. So was your dad, was he born in Korea and he came here? Or?
Yeah, both my parents. Actually, I was born in Korea as well.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, so we all emigrated when I was 3 years old. And we were plugged into a church community, and I grew up, you know, in youth group and playing piano and singing in the church youth band. And that's really where I developed a relationship with God, and it was really through music.
In Long Island?
In Long Island, yeah. There's a Korean American church in Long Island, and you know, music is such a deep part of me, so that's what naturally gravitated me towards church, really.
Did you start singing really young?
I did. I started probably singing, maybe not as young as some people, but I really started singing like 5th grade, 6th grade.
In front of people?
In front of people in
Okay.
elementary school. And just since then, I've been playing and singing in front of people at church and leading worship. And through those times, I really grew intimate with God. But it wasn't until when I went away to school in Ann Arbor in Michigan, we had a really strong campus ministry, and that's when God kind of, you know, was knocking harder at my heart's door and was asking to let him in fully. And that's when I really grew deeper and just understood who God was and who I was in God, and just going to Bible studies and being around other Christians and doing life with them, studying with them, and going through, you know, average teenage, young adult struggles, I guess, with them.
Yeah. Well, when you're saying God began to reach out to you, did you have him like talk to you, or did it happen because of seeing him in the lives of other people? How did that all happen?
I think I was really inspired by people around me in the church who were really on fire for God. And to me, it just it seemed like they were living for something so much bigger and so much greater. And I wanted to have that same sense of purpose and same sense of like, yeah, it's not just about me here on this earth, but what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What is my purpose? What is my calling?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, don't you think most people want to be involved in something bigger than themselves?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the desire of every person's heart. Every person's heart.
Yeah, and you look for it, and sometimes you find it in the wrong place, and sometimes you hit it right.
Right.
But you did.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to be in those wrong places, because I think, you know, it's all part of the experience and part of, you know, I'm sure there's a lesson in that.
And don't you think sometimes the wrong place teaches you where the right place is?
Absolutely.
I know that's what happened in my life, so I can see how that could happen. Well, did you start writing songs in college, or did you do it younger than that?
Yeah, actually, in college, I was part of a ministry called Creative Worship. So it was apart from the main band that was, you know, leading worship on stage. And it wasn't until my senior year, this is 2008, I graduated in 2008, that I started writing my own lyrics. And I was kind of like, where is this coming from? Like, why am I all of a sudden have this urge to produce and to write? And that's really when God spoke to me about, hey, I want you to be a songwriter. I want you to sing. That's the gift that I've given you, and that's what I want you to do for your life, you know? And to, I specifically remember him saying, you're going to sing songs that bring healing and bring joy to people. And I didn't really think much of it at that point, because, you know, when you're graduating, you kind of want to get a job and like make money and all that stuff. So I kind of put that aside for a little bit, but music was always, you know, in my heart, and I was always writing at home and playing guitar and playing piano. But it wasn't until recently, maybe about 3 years ago, that I felt that urge to write again. I just began writing a lot more. And I just remember God speaking to me back in 2008 when I started penning my first songs about my calling. And so all the years of, you know, working in the music industry and also leading worship at my local church, I still feel like it's preparation for me for something, I don't know, something bigger.
So you're saying, even though you're in your career, even though you know your call is to be a singer-songwriter and bring healing and joy to people, you're still on your way somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And there are a lot of times where I ask, what am I doing here at this talent agency? What's my purpose? Or, you know, I'm working this great 9-to-5 job, and I'm not really sure where I fit in it, because it's not like I'm singing at the agency, or I'm not represented by the agency. But I think, no, I know that God has a purpose for me to be there at this specific time, to learn specific things. So I just have to soak it in.
You think it could be learning the business end of it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because how many people rarely know the business end of what they're doing?
From a singer-songwriter? I mean,
Or
probably
even
not.
an actor or
Yeah.
any kind of an entertainer.
Right.
They're so gifted
Right.
in their talent
Yeah.
that they want to do it.
Right.
But they don't have the training or the background for the
Right.
business end.
Right.
And talk about the business end a little bit.
Yeah.
What have you learned from being there?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that, A, just be yourself, right? And B, it's a lot about trust and developing relationships, especially in a talent agency, you know, in any aspect of the music business, whether you're talking to a record label or publishing company. I think the first impression that people get from you and the feeling that they get from you when they're talking to you at a business meeting, or you know, you're going out for dinner or lunch or a lunch meeting, I think that's the lasting impression that they have.
So I think I'm hearing you say that at this job, you're there because you need an income, and yet there's an aspect of it, you don't know why you're there.
Yeah.
But also, I think I'm hearing you say that you're really trying to concentrate on the people that your company is representing,
Yeah.
and you're trying to figure out how can I help them.
Right.
Are you saying that?
Right. That's exactly
That's
right.
a big thing to you,
Yeah.
right? Well, you never know when one of those people is going to remember you.
Exactly, exactly. We come into contact with so many people, from artists to record labels to publishing to, you know, other talent agencies, and you just don't know along the way in the course of your life, like who is going to come back up. So you always want to leave a great impression and never burn any bridges.
Right, exactly. And that's probably something that this burning bridges thing, that's probably a piece of wisdom that you could share, because I bet you have seen people burn bridges.
Absolutely.
And what did they do wrong?
A lot of the times it's due to misunderstanding, or sometimes egos come into play. And I think a lot of this business is learning how to compromise and to meet each other in the middle so that you don't have to burn bridges.
And yet not sacrifice your values or your
Exactly.
principles. And that's hard to know in any field of work, because it's
Right,
going to
right.
always come up, don't you think?
Right. Yeah, and it's a good thing when you are come up against those kinds of situations, because then you can really evaluate yourself and see where your values lie, where you'll say, you know, this is where I draw the line. This
Right,
is,
right, and that's a good thing, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Well, talk to me a little bit now about how you have written these songs, because they're beautiful, and your voice is beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And it thrills me every time you sing. If I had to describe your voice, I would say clean, clear, and pure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would.
That's great.
And because I can, when I listen to the words and then I hear your voice convey
Right.
those words.
Right.
And to music, it touches me.
Yeah.
I always get excited when I know
Thank
you're going
you.
to sing. So just kind of walk us through maybe the last song you wrote.
Yeah.
How did you get the idea? What did you do with it?
Yeah.
And how did you get the music to it?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. A lot of my writing actually comes from my personal just journaling, my diary, I guess, my times that I spend with God, and struggles that I'm going through just as a young adult, you know, living in Manhattan. And sometimes other songs come from stories that I hear from other people.
Oh.
So in a sense, I'm kind of telling their story through song. I remember there was one friend who was crying to me one time because she was celebrating her birthday all alone in Manhattan. She had just moved from out of state and was missing her family, and you know, she didn't have many friends here. So I started writing a song about how how it's okay to let the tears fall. How, you know, it's okay because we're safe. You know, you're just talking to me. It's just me and you. So yeah, the songwriting either comes from my personal experiences or hearing other people's stories, and it's really just, I desire to be as real as possible in every emotion that humans feel, whether it's pain, you know, joy, jealousy, just to be able to encapsulate that in a real way. So that
Have
people
you
can
ever had
resonate.
to write a song about somebody who died or passed away?
Absolutely.
You have?
I have.
Tell
I
about
have,
that.
Yeah. I had a friend actually in college who passed away serving in the Marine Corps. And I wrote a song in 2008, right before I was graduating, about I guess, missing that person. And it was very releasing, I guess, a way for me to write out my feelings and to sing my feelings out. So it was a very therapeutic experience.
Did they
for me.
sing it at his funeral, or?
No. Unfortunately, I mean, I've only sung it in my bedroom. I haven't let anyone else hear it, to be honest. But it was one of those things, like, I feel like it was just for me, you know.
For you, and like, were you
maybe
talking to him
Right.
as if you could tell him goodbye or something?
Exactly.
Is that what it was all about?
Exactly. Yeah, it was more of like a closure.
So
song
there's
for
no way
me.
anybody could hear that song because you don't have it recorded?
I mean, maybe in a different iteration. Maybe I'll change up some of the lyrics.
Yeah,
or, you
yeah,
know,
right.
tune.
I could understand that,
Sure.
because I think the reason I'm asking that question is I think there are people who go through such hard times, like the death of somebody they deeply loved, a friend, whatever, and they don't really have a way to handle the deep feelings, the depth of them. And sometimes listening to the words of a song, especially if the person has introduced it and said, this I wrote and this is why and this is what was happening, there is something about that that touches them, helps them, releases their pain. So you wrote that song to release your pain, but it will help someone else.
I mean, I hope so if I rewrite it.
What do you like to write about the most, though?
I like to write about love, and just actually lately, the songs have been about like self-identity and confidence and learning how to get over fears. And they're more songs kind of for myself, you know. I'm singing them to myself about overcoming self-consciousness or overcoming judgment. So I think you would call them songs of empowerment. I think any form of, you know, an artist being able to release their emotions is healthy, really. So.
Do you ever sing anywhere in New York?
Yeah, I sing a lot of open mics, and I've done a couple of venues here and there, mainly uptown and on the Lower East Side. But right now I'm currently working on my album, so I finally decided on a producer, and we're discussing through the different tracks and instrumentation and things like that. So
How did you find your producer?
He actually came as a recommendation to me by a gentleman in my church. His name's Jacob Steele. And
The producer's name is Jacob
Oh,
Steele?
no. My
your
friend's
friend.
name is, Jacob Steele. Jacob actually ended up moving to Nashville. He's also a singer-songwriter. And he releases EP recently as well. But this producer's name is Rich, and he's based in Brooklyn. And we worked on a song together that I wrote called Voices. And Voices is basically about, you know, listening to your own inner voice rather than all the different voices that you hear from the world. And he and I, we ended up working really well together, and I just decided that he was the guy to go with. And you know,
Now, do you have to raise your own money to produce this?
Yeah, the goal is to have like an Indiegogo or some sort of fundraising platform, and it's a lot of it is not just so much the financials, but I really want other people to be a part of this whole process with me, because you know, a lot of my family and friends, they've known that this has been a desire of mine for so long. You know, they've always known that I had this gift and this talent of singing and songwriting, and now I'm finally, you know, doing something with it and really getting this project underway.
Going somewhere,
Yeah,
finally.
going somewhere with it. And they're constantly asking me, well, where can I buy your music? Like, do you have anything out? And I always have to tell them, like, no, I don't, you know. But now I can say, I have something, I'm working on something, and I would love for you to be a part of it with me. So it gives them a sense of ownership in my journey.
So
with all of it.
your family is really supportive of you?
Yeah, which is surprising. I think lately my mom and my dad have been really, you know, they've just been supporting me from like my first show, really, like when I first told them I was doing open mics and performing. And
It helps. Not everybody has the support of their family.
Yeah, and I was really shocked, to be honest, because I didn't really think that they thought, you know, music was a great career for me. But, you know, I think they just love seeing me doing something that I love, and that gives them joy. That really brings them satisfaction, like they've done a good job in raising me.
Oh,
you know?
wow.
So I think it's as much of a joy for them as it is, you know. I mean,
So will you pick out 13 songs? I mean, sometimes it seems to me on an album there's 13 songs on there.
yeah, 13 will be for an album. I think I'm probably going to go for 6 or 7, which is standard for an EP, which is not quite
What
an
does
album.
EP stand for?
It's called extended play. That's what it technically stands for. So it's not a single, but it's not a full-length album. It's in the middle. So.
And where do you buy those? Like, will they buy them on iTunes or what?
Yeah, it'll. The goal is to have them available on iTunes, Spotify, maybe Amazon Music too.
When do you anticipate having it all ready?
Oh goodness, that's a good question. Probably sometime like mid next year, because we're right now. Yeah, we're right now in the process of tracking or deciding on which tracks. To choose. So.
And have you written all the songs already? You have your 6 or 7 written, and you know, and you feel good about them, and they haven't. I guess you have a set way you're going to introduce each one, and there's like a flow to that. Is there a flow?
Well, that's something I'll be discussing with my producer. Right now, I basically sent him like a whole bank of my songs, and we're sifting through which ones we think might be best for the EP.
Wow, Jean, this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I'm sure those of you watching tonight have learned things that maybe nobody has even told you about how to get started in your career with music or performing. Whatever you're doing, I think that you will learn things from listening to Jean that will save you maybe months and months of preparing, trying to find who to talk to ask for these kinds of questions, answers. And I really hope that just even this show tonight gets you much further along the way in what you're doing with your life. So thank you so much for tuning in. It wasn't an accident that you turned on the TV tonight. I hope you received some wisdom and that you have a great rest of the night, whether you're going to sleep or going to work. I'll see you next time. Bye.